You know, there's something rather absurd happening all around us, and I mean everywhere you look. In every self-help book, every motivational seminar, every Instagram post with a sunset and an inspirational quote, everyone is trying to be happy. Now, at first glance, that sounds perfectly reasonable, doesn't it? What could possibly be wrong with trying to be happy? Isn't that what we're all supposed to do? Isn't that the whole point of life? But here's what nobody tells you. The very act of trying to be happy is precisely what's making you miserable. It's like trying to fall asleep by forcing yourself to fall asleep. The harder you try, the more awake you become. Let me explain what's really going on here. Because once you see this, once you really understand this paradox, your entire life changes. Picture a hamster on a wheel. The hamster runs and runs, thinking if I just run a little faster, I'll finally get somewhere. But of course, the wheel just spins faster. The destination never arrives. This is exactly what we're doing with happiness. We think happiness is somewhere up ahead, something we need to achieve, something we need to earn. We tell ourselves stories. I'll be happy when I get that promotion. I'll be happy when I find the right partner. I'll be happy when I lose weight, make more money, buy that house. And then what happens? You get the promotion. And for maybe a week, maybe a month, you feel something, a brief glow, but then it fades. And now you're looking at the next thing. Well, now I need to get the senior position. Now I need a bigger house. Now I need the goalposts keep moving. Because here's the secret the happiness industry doesn't want you to know. Happiness as a goal is impossible to reach. Why? Because the moment you make happiness a goal, you've created a problem. You've said, I am not happy now, but I will be happy then. And in that very moment, you've trapped yourself. You've made your present moment deficient. You've said, this isn't good enough. And how can you possibly be happy when you're constantly telling yourself that what is isn't good enough? I once knew a woman who spent 20 years chasing happiness. Therapy, meditation retreats, positive affirmations, vision boards, every technique you can imagine. And she was miserable. Absolutely miserable. Not because the techniques didn't work, but because she was using them all to fix a problem that didn't actually exist. The problem was simple. She was trying to be happy. And that trying was the source of all her suffering. Now let's look at what happens psychologically when you pursue happiness. There's a strange mechanism at work here. The moment you say, I want to be happy, you've implied I am not happy right now. You've created a division. Here I am, over here, unhappy. And there's happiness over there, somewhere in the future. And now you're split. Part of you is here, experiencing what is. And part of you is reaching for what should be. You're at war with yourself. You're rejecting the present in favor of an imagined future. But here's the thing. You can only ever exist in the present moment. This is it. This is always it. The future never comes. It's always now. So when you reject now in favor of some imagined future happiness, you're essentially saying, I refuse to be alive right now. I'll start living when I'm happy. But that future moment never arrives. Because when it does arrive, it's now again. And if your pattern is to reject now in favor of then, you'll keep doing that forever. You've trained yourself to be perpetually dissatisfied. Think about it like this. Imagine you're walking through a beautiful garden, but you're so focused on reaching the end of the path that you don't see any of the flowers. You don't smell the roses. You don't hear the birds. You're just rushing towards some imagined destination. And then you reach the end, and you think, okay, now I can be happy. But you can't, because you've forgotten how you've trained yourself to always be somewhere else, always be reaching, always be striving. This is what the Buddha meant by dukkha. It's often translated as suffering, but it's more accurate to say dissatisfaction. This chronic sense that something is not quite right, that you're not quite there yet, that you need to be different or better or more. And the irony, the more you chase happiness, the more you reinforce this dissatisfaction. You're literally training yourself to be unhappy by constantly trying to be happy. So what's the alternative? If you stop trying to be happy, what happens? Do you just become depressed? Do you give up on life? No. Something far more interesting happens. When you stop trying to be happy, when you stop making happiness a project, a goal, something you need to achieve, space opens up. And in that space, something very natural begins to emerge. I'm not talking about happiness as we usually understand it. I'm talking about something more fundamental, a kind of okayness, a basic sense that even though life is difficult, even though things don't always go your way, even though you're not perfect and never will be somehow, it's all okay. Not because you've achieved something, not because you've fixed yourself or improved yourself or become enlightened, but simply because that's what's here when you stop fighting with reality. Let me give you an example. Have you ever had a moment where you completely forgot about yourself? Maybe you were watching a sunset, or playing with a child, or completely absorbed in some creative work. And for that moment, you weren't thinking, am I happy? Am I doing this right? You just were. That's what I'm talking about. Not happiness as an achievement, but aliveness as a natural state. The Taoists have a beautiful phrase for this, Wu Wei. It means not forcing or action without action. It's like swimming with the current instead of against it. You're not trying to be happy. You're just responding to what is. And here's the strange thing. When you stop trying to be happy, you often feel, well, something very much like happiness. But it's not the desperate, grasping kind of happiness. It's more like contentment, peace, a sense that you're okay exactly as you are, right now, in this moment. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. When you stop trying to be happy all the time, you also stop being afraid of being unhappy. Think about that for a moment. Half of our suffering comes not from painful experiences themselves, but from our resistance to them. We're afraid of sadness, afraid of anxiety, afraid of boredom, afraid of loneliness. So we develop all these strategies to avoid these feelings. We distract ourselves, we numb ourselves, we scroll through social media, we binge watch shows, we overwork, we overeat. We do anything to avoid feeling what we're actually feeling. But feelings are like waves in the ocean. They rise, they peak, they fall. That's their nature. And when you stop fighting them, when you stop trying to make the sad waves go away so only happy waves remain, something remarkable happens. The waves don't actually hurt you. Sadness comes, you feel sad, and then it passes. Anxiety arises, you feel anxious, and then it dissolves. It's only when you resist these feelings, when you tell yourself, I shouldn't feel this way, something is wrong with me, that's when they become problematic. I had a friend who was terrified of depression. She'd felt depressed once in her 20s, and it was so painful that she spent the next 20 years doing everything possible to avoid ever feeling that way again. Positive thinking, constant activity, surrounding herself with people, always staying busy. And she was exhausted, absolutely exhausted, because she was using so much energy to keep depression away. Until one day she just couldn't do it anymore. The depression came. And you know what happened? She felt it, fully felt it. And it was okay, not pleasant, not something she wanted to repeat, but also not the catastrophe she'd been afraid of. It came, it stayed for a while, and then it left, like weather. And after that, she stopped being afraid because she realized these feelings can't actually destroy you. They're just experiences, temporary states, part of the full spectrum of being human. Now, let me address something that might be bothering you. Doesn't positive thinking work? Aren't there studies showing that optimism leads to better outcomes? Yes and no. Here's the distinction. There's a difference between genuine optimism and forced positivity. Genuine optimism is when you see reality clearly, including its difficulties, and you choose to engage with it constructively. You don't deny problems exist. You just don't catastrophize them. But forced positivity, toxic positivity, as some people call it, is when you try to paste happy thoughts over uncomfortable feelings. When you tell yourself everything happens for a reason when something terrible occurs. When you invalidate your own genuine emotions because you think you should be positive. This forced positivity is actually a form of violence against yourself. You're essentially telling yourself your real feelings are not acceptable. You must perform happiness. And that performance is exhausting. It's another form of trying to be happy. And as we've discussed, trying to be happy makes you miserable. The self-help industry has sold us this idea that we need to constantly work on ourselves, constantly improve, constantly cultivate positive emotions. We need to journal, meditate, affirm, visualize, manifest. We need to be our best selves. But what if your ordinary self is actually fine? What if you don't need to be fixed or improved or optimized? I'm not saying self-reflection isn't valuable. I'm saying there's a difference between genuinely exploring yourself and constantly trying to make yourself into something different. One is curiosity. The other is rejection. One says, let me see what's actually here. The other says, what's here isn't good enough. And that subtle difference changes everything. So if trying to be happy doesn't work, what does? How do you actually live a good life? Well, here's the paradox. You stop making it about you. You stop asking, how can I be happy? And you start asking, what is this moment asking of me? Let me explain. When you're constantly focused on your own happiness, you're trapped in yourself. You're like a dog chasing its own tail. Everything becomes about, how am I feeling? Am I happy yet? What do I need to do to feel better? But when you shift the focus outward, something changes. You start noticing what needs to be done. Maybe someone needs help. Maybe there's a task that wants to be completed. Maybe there's beauty to be appreciated. Maybe there's just living to be done. And in that engagement, in that forgetting of self, something very much like happiness arises. But it's a byproduct, not a goal. Think about the moments in your life when you felt most alive. I bet they weren't moments when you were consciously trying to be happy. They were moments when you were fully absorbed in something, creating something, connecting with someone, solving a problem, experiencing something beautiful. You forgot about yourself. And in that forgetting, you found yourself. This is what the philosophers call self-transcendence. Not in some mystical sense, but in the very practical sense of getting out of your own way. Stopping the constant self-monitoring. Am I doing this right? Am I happy? How do I compare to others? Just doing what's here to be done. Being what's here to be. Responding to what is. And in that response, in that engagement with life as it actually is rather than as you think it should be, there's a kind of fulfillment that makes the pursuit of happiness look shallow and desperate in comparison. What I'm describing is really very simple, though our complicated minds tend to make it complex. Instead of trying to be happy, try being present. Just be here, fully here, with whatever is happening. If you're washing dishes, wash dishes. Don't wash dishes while thinking about how you'd rather be doing something else. Don't wash dishes while planning tomorrow or rehashing yesterday. Just wash dishes. Feel the warm water. See the soap bubbles. Hear the clink of plates. That's it. If you're talking with someone, talk with them. Don't talk while simultaneously scrolling your phone or planning what you'll say next or judging whether this conversation is making you happy. Just talk. Listen. Respond. Be there. If you're sad, be sad. Don't be sad about being sad. Don't tell yourself you shouldn't be sad. Don't try to fix it or change it or escape it. Just feel it. Let it be what it is. This might sound passive, but it's actually the most active thing you can do because you're fully engaging with reality instead of fighting with it. And reality, when you stop fighting it, is surprisingly workable. Things that seem like problems often resolve themselves, or you find you can handle them, or you realize they weren't actually problems in the first place. The Zen teacher Shunryu Suzuki said something beautiful about this. He said, enlightenment is just to be ourselves, not to become something else, not to achieve some special state, just to be what we already are. And that being, that simple presence, that willingness to be here without constantly trying to change the channel, that's where peace lives. Not the peace that comes from getting what you want, the peace that comes from no longer fighting with what is. Now, you might be thinking, but wait, if I stop trying to be happy, if I stop setting goals and pursuing better states, won't I just become passive? Won't I stop growing? Won't I just accept whatever happens? This is a common misunderstanding. I'm not talking about passivity or resignation. I'm talking about the difference between force and flow. When you're trying to be happy, you're forcing. You're pushing against what is, trying to make it into what you think it should be. And that forcing creates tension, resistance, suffering. But when you stop forcing, you don't stop moving. You just start flowing. You respond to what's actually here instead of what you think should be here. Let me give you a practical example. Say you want to change careers. The forcing approach says, I'm not happy with my current job. I need to find a job that will make me happy. Let me research the perfect career, make a plan, force it to happen, and maybe that works. But more often you end up chasing another illusion, another if only. And even if you get the new job, you bring the same mind with you, the same tendency to be dissatisfied, the same pattern of looking for happiness elsewhere. The flowing approach says, okay, I'm not satisfied with my current situation. What is that dissatisfaction telling me? What am I actually drawn toward? What small step wants to happen right now? And then you take that step, not because you think it will make you happy, but because it's what wants to happen, and then the next step reveals itself. And the next, you're still moving, still growing, still changing, but you're not forcing it, you're allowing it. You're following your actual aliveness instead of some mental idea of what should make you happy. This is what it means to live without goals, not without direction, but without the tyranny of should. Without the constant measurement of am I there yet? Have I arrived? You're always arriving because you're always here. So what does life look like when you're not trying to be happy? What does true contentment actually feel like? It's not euphoria. It's not constant bliss. It's not walking around with a smile on your face all the time. It's more like okayness. Even when things are difficult, even when you're facing challenges, even when you're sad or scared or uncertain, there's a baseline sense that you can handle this, that this too is part of life, that you don't need to be rescued from your own experience. You stop dividing life into good and bad experiences, into pleasant and unpleasant moments. Everything becomes just life, experience, the flow of existence. Pleasant things come, you enjoy them, but you don't cling to them. You don't desperately try to make them permanent. Unpleasant things come, you feel them, but you don't push them away. You don't tell yourself something has gone terribly wrong. It's all just weather. Some days are sunny, some days are stormy. And you're the sky that holds it all. I remember talking to an old woman once who had lived through tremendous hardships, loss of loved ones, financial struggles, health problems. And she had this quality about her, this peace. I asked her, how do you stay so calm through all of this? And she laughed. She said, I don't stay calm. Sometimes I'm calm. Sometimes I'm upset. Sometimes I'm happy. Sometimes I'm sad. But underneath all of that, I'm okay. I've stopped fighting with life. That's contentment. Not the absence of difficulty. The absence of resistance to difficulty. So here's what I'm inviting you to do. Not as another self-improvement project. Not as another technique to achieve happiness, but as a genuine experiment. For just one day, stop trying to be happy. Stop monitoring your emotional state. Stop asking yourself, am I happy? Could I be happier? What should I do to feel better? Just be here, fully here, with whatever is happening. If you're washing dishes, wash dishes. If you're walking, walk. If you're eating, eat. If you're sad, be sad. If you're joyful, be joyful. Don't try to change anything. Don't try to improve anything. Don't try to make yourself into something better. Just be what you already are, which is life itself, expressing as you, right now, in this moment. And notice what happens. Notice if there's a slight easing, a slight letting go, a sense that you don't have to carry such a heavy burden, because the burden isn't life itself. The burden is trying to make life into something other than what it is, trying to make yourself into someone other than who you are, trying to be happy instead of simply being alive. And when you drop that burden, when you stop trying to be happy, something extraordinary happens. You don't become depressed. You don't become passive. You don't stop caring. You become more alive, more present, more capable of genuine joy. Not because you're trying to cultivate joy, but because joy is what naturally arises when you stop fighting with reality. Welcome to life as it actually is. Not as you think it should be, not as you hope it will become, but as it is, right here, right now. It's enough. It's always been enough. You've always been enough. You just forgot, because you were so busy trying to be something more. So stop trying and start being. That's where the real happiness lives. Not in the trying, but in the stopping.